A veteran lingered in a shop, shunned for his scars. A clerk handed him $1,000 to ease his load. That act stirred a storm, and by dusk, his unseen courage glowed across town, turning a simple deed into a tale of grit and grace. Hi everyone, welcome to Life Unveiled. Let's get started. In the small town of Havenwood, Kentucky, where grey stone houses lined the riverbank and an old bridge creaked under the wind, a veteran of the Afghanistan War lived on the edges of life. He was in his early 40s, lean and weathered, with short dark hair flecked with grey, and scars tracing his neck from shrapnel wounds. Born and raised in Havenwood, he spent his boyhood fishing along the river's muddy banks, dreaming of becoming a mechanic like his uncle, who fixed tractors in a cluttered garage down the road. His childhood home was a modest clapboard house with a sagging porch where his mother baked cornbread and his father told stories of his own days in Vietnam. At 18, in 2008, he enlisted in the army, driven by a mix of duty and a need to escape the quiet monotony of small-town life. 4 years in Kabul followed, driving armoured trucks through dust-choked roads, dodging IEDs, and pulling wounded buddies from wreckage. In 2012, an explosion stole his left hand and left a constant ringing in his ears. He returned with a Medal of Honor, a clunky prosthetic, and promises of support that faded like morning mist. Jobs were scarce. He would mutter to himself, "Who needs a one-armed guy who flinches at loud noises?" while staring at his reflection in a cracked mirror. His parents had passed, his mother to illness, his father to grief, and his brother had moved west years ago. By the fall of 2024, he was a shadow drifting through Havenwood, sleeping in an old shed by the river, surrounded by rusted cans and the ghosts of his past. Another soul called Havenwood home. A store clerk in her late 30s, petite with red hair tied back in a loose ponytail and green eyes that shone with quiet warmth. She worked at Riverside Market, a small shop on Main Street with creaky wooden floors and shelves stocked with canned goods, bread, and coffee. Raised in a military family, her father a Marine who served in the Gulf War, she grew up hearing tales of sacrifice and struggle around the kitchen table. After high school, she stayed in town despite her mother's pleas to chase a career in Louisville or Nashville. Her mother would say, "You've got a good head, why waste it here?" But she loved Havenwood's heartbeat, the way neighbours lingered to chat, the comfort of knowing everyone's quirks. She started at the market as a teenager, sweeping floors, then moved to the register where she kept a notebook behind the counter, scribbled with customers' names, their usual buys, and bits of their lives. Who lost a job? Whose kid was off to college? The shop was her anchor, a place where she could listen and help in small ways, whether it was slipping an extra loaf to a struggling family or brewing a free coffee for someone having a rough day. Their paths crossed on a rainy October afternoon in 2024. The clerk was finishing her shift, counting the day's receipts under the hum of fluorescent lights, when she glanced out the window and saw the veteran standing under the shop's awning. He wore a frayed jacket, his prosthetic dangling loosely from a strap, his eyes fixed on the bread display inside. His face was gaunt, etched with exhaustion, and rain dripped from his cap onto his shoulders. She could have locked up and headed home since her shift was over and supper waited, but something in his stillness tugged at her. She grabbed a warm roll from the day's leftovers and stepped outside. She said, "Prove you won't turn this down," while holding it out with a half smile. He took it, mumbling, "Thanks," without meeting her gaze. She hesitated, then pulled $1,000 from her purse, savings she earmarked for a car repair, and pressed it into his hand. She said firmly, "Not a handout. Do something with it." He stared at the bills, his brow furrowing. He asked, "Why me?" in a rough voice. She shrugged. "Because I can. And you don't look like you'll waste it," she replied. Her house became his shelter that night. It was a small place a block from the shop, with peeling white paint and a porch lined with potted geraniums she nursed through the summer. Inside, it smelled of coffee and lavender from a candle she lit to chase away the damp. The living room had a worn sofa, a knit blanket draped over it, and a bookshelf stuffed with paperbacks, mysteries, and old westerns her dad used to read. She handed him a towel, pointed to a bathroom with a hot shower, and tossed him a clean t-shirt from a box of her brother's old clothes. Supper was simple but hearty: potato soup with crusty bread and a slice of apple pie she baked the night before. Over the meal, he opened up, his voice gravelly but steady. He told her about Kabul, hauling a bleeding friend 2 miles through sand, only to lose him to a second blast and the empty promises of help back home. He said, "Medals in a drawer, and I'm out here," while staring at his bowl. She nodded, stirring her soup. She offered, "Stay tonight, sofa's free." He paused, then agreed, too tired to argue with the warmth of a real roof. Next morning, she left for the shop, scribbling a note on the kitchen table. "Coffee's on the stove, food's in the fridge, back by 6. He woke with a flicker of something he hadn't felt in years: purpose. The $1,000 weighed heavy in his pocket, a lifeline he couldn't ignore. He walked into town under a grey sky, bought batteries for an old flashlight stashed in the shed, and used a payphone outside the post office to call an army buddy, Tom, who ran a repair shop 30 miles away in Franklin. Tom said, "Got a spot for a helper," after a pause. "Get over here," he added. He trudged back to the shed, borrowed a neighbour's beat-up pickup with permission, and drove to the market, determined to repay her. By the time she returned, the storeroom shelf she meant to fix stood straight, and a broken fan whirred smoothly since he patched it one-handed, his old skills resurfacing. She smiled, leaning against the counter. She said, "Stay as long as you need. Plenty of room?" He nodded, and a week stretched into a month. He started fixing things around her house: a squeaky porch step that annoyed her every morning, a dripping faucet in the kitchen she ignored for months, an ancient toaster that hadn't worked since her last tenant moved out. The $1,000 went to a basic toolkit, parts to tune up the borrowed pickup, and a bus ticket to Tom's shop, where he began assisting with repairs, old Fords, rusty Chevys, anything with an engine. His hand, though missing fingers, remembered the motions, threading bolts and tightening hoses with a rhythm he thought lost. She didn't stop at the money. Through a friend at the VA clinic, she tracked down a new prosthetic, lightweight, with better grip, and offered him odd jobs delivering supplies for the market in her rickety delivery van. He told her one evening, "Your cash got me moving," while wiping grease from his palm, adding, "But I'll stand on my own." She respected that, leaving sandwiches and mugs of coffee on the table like quiet tokens of faith. Evenings became a ritual. They sat over supper, fried chicken with mashed potatoes one night, a warm peach cobbler the next, and he shared more. He spoke of starting a truck under fire to save his squad, of losing John, who begged him to tell his wife he loved her as he bled out. He would ask, "Why'd I make it?" while staring at his plate. She looked at him across the table, her voice soft but firm. She answered, "To find a new fight. You're winning it." He stopped rummaging for the beer cans he used to hoard since she slipped them out of sight weeks ago, replacing them with soda. In November, they tackled the pickup together. She brought a toolbox from the shop, a battered red case her dad had left behind, and they spent a weekend in her backyard shed, rain tapping the tin roof. He slid under the chassis, wrench in hand, while she handed him tools, their breaths fogging in the chill. With the last of the $1,000, he bought a new battery, spark plugs, and a can of blue paint. By Sunday, the engine roared to life, and he grinned from the driver's seat, the first real smile she saw. He said, "Not done yet," while revving it. She patted the hood. "Just starting," she replied. By December, he enrolled in a mechanics course at the community college in Franklin, using the leftover cash and VA benefits she helped him navigate. The new prosthetic arrived, sleek, black, with fingers that moved like his own, and he worked at Tom's, fixing cars with growing confidence. He rented a tiny room above a barber shop on Main Street, bought a pair of sturdy boots, and mailed a letter to his brother after years of silence, the words shaky but honest. One night, as they split a pizza on her porch, he hugged her tight, his voice thick. He said, "You gave me more than money, you gave me back myself." She squeezed his shoulder. "Prove it by living," she answered. January brought trouble to the market. A new owner, a sharp-suited guy from Louisville, took over and fired her for inefficiency after she refused to rush elderly customers. She sat at home, counting pennies, her savings gone to the $1,000 she gave him. 3 veterans knocked on her door one snowy evening. Their leader, a grizzled man with a limp, said, "From him." He added, "You handed him $1,000 and a roof when he was nothing." The veteran, now steady at Tom's shop, had called his old squad mates from a veterans fund. One, a lawyer, got her job reinstated with back pay. Another, a mechanic, tuned the market's delivery van. The third brought a sack of groceries. She found his note tucked in her coat pocket later. "I'm good. Work, school, life. Thanks for stopping." He climbed from despair with her $1,000 and kindness. She, expecting nothing, got help when the shop turned on her since his comrades repaid her deed. One act sparked a chain of light, lifting them both. His journey shows a single kind act can pull someone from the dark, and resilience paired with care comes back tenfold. Goodness is a spark that burns brighter when shared.
If you enjoyed the story, drop a like and subscribe for more tales like this. Hit the bell, and we'll catch you in the next one.